Welcome to the Raw Food Health Empowerment Podcast. I'm so excited today to have Dr. Brooke Goldner with us today. Dr. Brooke Goldner is a board-certified medical doctor and the author of 3 best-selling books, Goodbye Lupus, Goodbye Autoimmune Disease, and Green Smoothie Recipes to Kickstart Your Health and Healing. She has been featured on the front cover of Vegan Health and Fitness magazine 3 times, including the recent cover of Fit Over 40. She graduated from Carnegie Mellon University with honors for genetic research in leukemia and neurobiology, and was a graduate of the Temple University School of Medicine, was chief resident at UCLA Harbor Residency, and holds a certificate in plant-based nutrition from Cornell University. She is the founder of GoodbyeLupus.com and creator of the Hyper-Nourishing Protocol for Autoimmune Reversal. Dr. Goldner, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Yeah. So what inspired you to go raw vegan?
Gosh, I wish I could say that was ever really a plan for me. It actually wasn't. It kind of happened by accident. So I was planning to get married. And for me, that was a really big deal because I've had a disease called lupus since I was 16 years old. And one of the things that happened with lupus, besides kidney failure and blood clots and mini strokes and arthritis and all of that, was my doctors were very clear with me that not only would I live a shorter life and become disabled, but that I also would not be able to have children. And that's a lot to put on somebody who has to marry them. So as much as I was madly in love, when my husband proposed, I had to explain all this to him, that I can't have your children. You're going to end up taking care of me when I become disabled. I'm not going to live a long life. It was a tough thing to have to lay out there and potentially lose the person that I love. But he is amazing. And he said, you know what, I'd rather have a short life with you than a lifetime with anybody else. So it's a short life, it'll be the best damn life you could ever have. And I went, okay, great, this is exciting, let's do it. So the issue was, at this point now, besides being broke and how do you plan a wedding with no money, was that I also was overweight. And, the white coat can cover a lot. And I was over 20 pounds overweight. And we figured out if we saved up, we could just elope to Hawaii and have a great wedding for us. and if any of our closest friends wanted to come to see it, they could. But I still wanted to look great in my wedding gown like every other woman does, or some men, right? So anyway, I asked my husband to train me because my husband is actually very famous in the fitness world. He has his own best-selling book, Miracle Metabolism, and his obsession was that when he was getting his master's degree in exercise science, he was really frustrated when the professors would say, well, some diets work better for some people and other diets work for others. And his mind would bleed. He's like, no, this is not science, right? That on a cellular level, we're all identical. Our cells all require the same nutrients. So there should be one optimal diet for humans. It does not make sense that some do better and some that there's one optimal, because on a cellular level, we're the same. So he was obsessed with figuring out how nutrition affects metabolism, because metabolism is what affects fat loss and muscle building. And that's what he was known for. At the time he was working with, people on MTV, which was cool back in 2003. I don't know what's cool anymore, actually, but back then it was pretty cool. So I asked him to train me because I wanted to look as good as those TV people at my wedding, right? Why not? So he applied what he understood back then. One of the things he had learned looking at cellular biology and metabolism was that if people have high levels of nutrition, especially from raw vegetables, that they had higher metabolic rates, which meant they could build muscle faster, lose fat faster. So he was putting people on pounds of raw cruciferous vegetables, things like that. High omega-3s actually made the metabolism work better and faster. Water intake, very important. So he was doing all that. Now, at the time, this was again, a while ago, he thought people still needed meat for protein. They were teaching him that in his master's classes, that you need to eat some kind of meat. So he said, what's the best meat you can get? And it was like free range. Now, I had been a vegetarian since I was 12, not for health reasons. I was eating eggs and cheese all day, so it wasn't healthy, but for animals. I just didn't want to eat animals. And but I ate cheese, eggs, processed foods. I mean, at the time I was in medical school, I was in Pittsburgh doing rotations where if you ordered a salad, they put French fries and ranch dressing on top. So hence overweight. I always say, if you want to be sick and overweight, eat hospital food. It is really good for hospital business. I mean, it's like the worst stuff in the planet being served up in the hospital. So anyway, I asked him to train me, but I said, I'm not going to eat meat. So he said, okay, well, you don't have to eat the meat, but all that saturated fat you're eating from all the cheese and the egg yolks and all that, you're not going to lose fat eating that. So I accidentally became a mostly raw vegan, but there was no plan. It just was like, well, if you take out the animal products or the dairy and the cheese and all that, and then I'm eating all these raw vegetables, and I ate some tofu because he's like, I don't know what to substitute meat, whatever. So he did that. I found that's actually unnecessary now for protein, but back then that was the best we could do. And what happened was, first of all, it worked. I went from a size 11 to size 3 in 3 months. Wow. I was ripped. I looked amazing, right? And for the first time in 12 years, I was diagnosed with lupus at 16. I was 28 years old, and I had pushed through college and medical school with chemotherapy and high dose steroids and all these other medicines, chronic fatigue and pain. Like I pushed through all that to achieve everything I had. And I'd been sick for 12 years, Yeah. And within a couple of weeks of changing my diet, I had a lot of energy. I didn't have aches and pains. I didn't have any migraines, and it was weird because I didn't know why I felt better. But I felt better. So I kept doing that. And so when I went to get my labs drawn right before the wedding, so it had been about 3.5 months that I've been eating that way. For the first time in 12 years, my labs were negative for lupus, which is an incurable chronic disease. I was now an intern. So I learned everything I was supposed to learn in medical school. Nowhere ever did it say that nutrition has anything to do with it. It's just genetics and bad luck, right? And so nobody could explain why my labs were better. Some people suggested it was love, but I was in love for 6 months, still had lupus. And then I changed my diet and suddenly it got better, but I don't know. But we didn't know. And actually, I didn't even know that. I never believed the lupus was gone because I had just graduated medical school and I had a chronic incurable disease. So it was like, maybe it's some kind of weird remission, even though remissions, I'd been in remission before. I still had lupus labs. I still took medicine for pain. It just was that my kidneys weren't failing in the moment. You know what I mean? So it made no sense. But I didn't actually realize the lupus was gone until finally, after 4 years of negative labs, now I've got abs. I'm like the best shape of my life. Finally, after 4 years of being healthy and off all medication for 3 at the time, because I stayed on them for like a year because I didn't know what to do. That's when I had my first son. And I had a healthy pregnancy, no relapse. And that's finally when my husband and I realized, maybe the lupus is gone. And if it is, what did we do? What happened? And so that's what really led to my research and discoveries about how nutrition affects cellular biology, cellular repair, and the immune system. And the key to unlocking that is correctly nourishing your cells and to stop damaging them. And the majority of the ways we do that damage is through our lifestyle and our diet. So that's how I became that way. There was never, I wish I'd had some insight. People have interviewed me and said, how did you know that there was something better than meds? I didn't. No.
You just stumbled upon it.
Love, and I stumbled and all this stuff. And then it just happened. And it was, I feel like everything is perfect, like all the years I was sick helped me understand life with lupus and helped me learn how to survive it and how to be grateful and happy in spite of whatever I had to deal with physically. Mm-hmm. So, that was one thing. I have, an inconquerable spirit. I've never let anything or anyone tell me what I couldn't do. I mean, I was told at 16, I had 6 months to live. I didn't believe them then, right? So, I appreciate the time I spent sick. I did genetic research before I became a doctor to understand, genetics, and it was for genetics and leukemia and brain development. So my understanding of cellular biology and genetics was really locked in even before I became a doctor, so that when this did happen to me with nutrition, I had the ability to understand why and how, and actually be able to turn that into a protocol that is consistently, universally works for people. Like my husband was right. There is one best way to feed the body. And it not only helps people who with lupus like me, but scleroderma, Sjogren's, MS, cholesterol issues, heart disease. I mean, you nourish the cells right, and it turns out they actually know how to fix themselves. So
look at that.
That's how I got here. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, at 16, you're told you have 6 months to live. That is just heartbreaking. But like for folks who don't fully grasp how severe lupus is. I know I personally have had cousins die from lupus, which is why when I saw, you on another interview and I saw your book, I was like, wow, people need to hear about this. They need to know about this, because there's a lot of people who have had family members die from lupus. And the only thing I've read so far is, about water fasting. I think Dr. Joel Furman talked about in one of his books. It was actually a book on fasting. And he mentioned water fasting, but most people, this is really difficult. And I don't know, is lupus that difficult that it would push someone to do a water fast versus actually just eat and just have it, raw, but if you can just kind of explain, what was it like living with lupus, and even hearing you have 6 months to live, and like, are you able to have a child with lupus? Like, what, just bring us into your world at that time.
Yeah, it's a pretty horrific illness. There was, I remember when I was sick, somebody told me that they went to a meeting in a diabetes support group, and their slogan was, "At least it's not lupus." And I was just like, wow. And whenever you watch like House MD or something, it's always like, he can cure anything, but not lupus, like it's one of those diseases where it's really scary diagnosis to get. So lupus is an autoimmune disease. And what that means is that it's a disease in which your immune system, which is supposed to be your protection against illness and disease, right? That if your immune system is in place and working, it is what protects you against viruses and bacteria. It's what heals you from injuries when you stumble and fall, right? Your immune system is really important. It's supposed to find microscopic cancers and stop them from growing and destroy them. Your immune system is what keeps you going and alive and resilient to different things that can damage you. So in autoimmune disease, the immune system stops working properly because of the effects of chronic inflammation through our diets and lifestyles. That is the actual trigger. But what happens is your immune system, instead of being able to quickly identify invaders like a virus or a bacteria, it now has trouble identifying what's an invader and what's supposed to be here. And it starts attacking different areas of the body. So depending on what autoimmune disease you have, it really is based on what antibodies you have. So someone with Sjogren's, they develop antibodies against mucous membranes. So their eyes dry out, their mouth dries out, their vaginal secretions dry out, they're just dry. Right? People with rheumatoid arthritis, they have antibodies that create joint pain and fatigue. People with scleroderma, it takes the elasticity out of their skin and their skin turns hard and rigid. So these different types of autoimmune diseases, which on a molecular level are the same in terms of the immune system and how it's acting, but where the target is where it gets its name, right? What organ is it attacking? With lupus, it can attack any organ. And it often will start with one and over time grow to attack other ones. So for example, there are some people who start out with lupus just in their skin and they just get horrible disfiguring rashes. But at some point it invades and becomes systemic, as we call it, and invades different parts of the body, usually. Many people with lupus have arthritis. I had terrible arthritis, like just sometimes the smallest joint hurt the worst, like one toe, you just, I can't walk, right? Or it could be your knees or your elbows or your shoulders or your fingers, and it can move around. I had the type that was called migratory, where it would move from one shoulder to the other shoulder, all over the place. And you can have it attack many different organs. Most common would be the skin and the kidneys. All right. And your immune system is actually very good at attacking and destroying things. So that's the other problem, is that once it starts attacking an organ, it can and will destroy it if it continues. So for example, I've helped people reverse lupus and get their health back who had lupus in their lungs, in their brains. One woman was having 3 to 4 seizures a day from lupus in her brain. All the seizures stopped within the first couple of weeks of working in my rapid recovery group, but wow, terrifying. Like, she had to stop working, she had to move back home, and afraid to walk out the door because she could collapse in a seizure. I've seen it attack the heart. There was a young girl I helped reverse her disease. She was 12 years old. It was in her heart, lungs, and kidney at the same time. She was a code blue in the hospital. Now she's in high school, off her medicines, totally doing fine because we changed her diet. But this is how terrifying it is. Most people don't have this piece that I have. And so when you're diagnosed with it, you're told that you have a lifelong chronic illness that is going to continue to spread and attack your different organs until you die younger than everyone else. That is the prognosis for lupus right now. And so it's terrifying. The medicines we have are mostly geared towards shutting off the immune system, which can stop the progress of lupus. But now you got a whole nother can of worms, don't you? Because you don't have a properly functioning immune system. There's COVID. There's other bacteria and viruses that'll get you. There's cancer. You know, when I was given the chemotherapy I was given for my kidney failure. So when I was diagnosed at 16, I was in stage 4 kidney failure, and I had the most aggressive form. It's called membranoproliferative. It's a mouthful, but it's a type of lupus nephritis, lupus in the kidneys, that is the most aggressive. And they said by the time they found it, it was progressing so rapidly that he predicted within 6 months I'd be in total kidney failure, in which I would be dead or on dialysis at best. So that was his entry into explaining to me why I should do this experimental treatment using chemotherapy, which we still use to this day, medicine, we as in medicine. But the goal was that chemotherapy, when you use it for cancer patients, one of the side effects is that it's not just poisoning the cells, the cancer cells, it poisons growing cells, but it also suppresses the immune system. And that's why a lot of people with cancer die of infections, right? You ever see someone with cancer and they have like a mask on because any infection could kill them because they have no more immune system from the chemo. So they did that on purpose with me. They said, if your immune system is killing your kidney, what if we intentionally shut it off, shut off your whole immune system by increasingly raising doses of chemotherapy until we stop the process of the disease. So that's what I did. And back then they didn't know how long to use it for because it was a new treatment. So I did it for 2 years straight. I took increasing doses of chemotherapy until finally my kidneys stopped. The lupus stopped attacking my kidneys. So they tried to stop it after a year, and then my kidneys started to fail again. And so they kept going. And so for 2 years, 16 to 18, I took AP courses and I took 7 pills a day and I did chemotherapy. And I graduated high school. That was my life.
Wow.
But it's kind of one of those things where if you have an aggressive form of lupus, if you don't know any other way, it's just scary medicines are your only chance. And I remember when I had the chemotherapy, they told me this now raises your risk of ovarian cancer and other cancer, because by getting chemotherapy, it also raises your risk of cancer because you're poisoning cells. So it's like this, you're constantly trying to choose between the scary side effects of your medicines and how scary it is to leave lupus running wild in your body, which is dangerous as well. So it's very scary. And there are people who get remissions. I was lucky. I did get remissions where I still had the disease, but like after 2 years of chemo, my kidneys were stable. I still had protein in my urine, which is a sign of kidney problems, but they told me I'd always have it. But they were no longer failing. And I actually stayed in that remission through college. I still had joint pain. I took medicines for that. I had migraines. I took medicines for that. I had my steroids, but my kidneys were working. So that was remission, which is very different than what I have now, right?
Yeah.
So, so that is like with lupus. It's like, if you're lucky, the medicines help you feel better. If you're lucky, the medicines can stop some of the progression of your worst symptoms, but it's going to happen again. It's not like you take the medicine, you get your stable dose and you're fine. It's like a holding point. You put a bookmark in it, but you always know that even on that sunny day, there's a rain cloud that's going to come. Mm-hmm. And for me, that was medical school. Medical school, I could no longer control for the things that helped me the most, like getting enough sleep. I was working 100 hours a week. Now we have laws that say no more than 80, but back then we didn't. I'm almost 45 now. It's like, it was a minute ago when I was in medical school, right? So, I was working 100-hour weeks. I was exhausted. I was stressed. And that's when I got a new form of lupus called anti-cardiolipin antibody, which is when the lupus causes an antibody that causes blood clots. So I started getting double vision because I was throwing blood clots into my brain, and I was getting double vision. And then I collapsed one day, and then they said, oh, you have this new antibody now. Your kidneys are still stable, but now you're going to have a stroke if you keep going. So then I had to take blood thinners, and I had to inject them every day into my stomach. And they said, just inject this every day for the rest of your life, but never get pregnant, because between your kidneys and the blood clots, you're going to die, and your kid probably wouldn't make it anyway. And so it's just like, okay, here's my new thing. And so it was always scary when it happened. And then it was like, okay, well, at least there's a medicine that could save me. So, I always tried to take it in stride that this is what I got. There's a medicine that can help me. And so I just focused all of my intention and energy on making my life mean something, because I figured none of us know how much time we have. None of us know what's going to happen. You could be perfectly healthy, get your house hit by a meteor, right? I mean, like, we don't know what time we have, but we can choose what we do with it. And so for me, I felt like, I felt very driven to become a doctor. I felt like I could help people with chronic illness learn to live good lives. That's what I hoped I could do. Like, I could be an example and I could help them, mostly with the emotional side was what I thought. Even when I had the blood clots, that was the biggest mourning I ever had, because I knew from 16 I would become physically disabled. I'd had chronic arthritis. I was probably going to end up in a wheelchair. I knew this, but as long as I had this, I could be a doctor, right? You can be a wheelchair and you can be a doctor. But when I was having the mini strokes, so I was having these blood clots, but they were passing through, so they didn't cause permanent damage, but they could if they continued. I realized that if I had a stroke, I would lose everything, because I put all my money and time into growing the brain. I didn't have, there's no backup. I'm not coordinated. I'm not going to be an athlete. I can pick up a heavy weight and put it down. Throw a ball at me, it's going to hit me in the head. I'm not going to catch it. You know what I mean? So that was really, really stressful at the time. But I just kept coming back to, I'm still lucky that I just take these blood thinners and I keep going, because my dream's in sight. I'm going to graduate med school. I'm going to live my dream. And that's what matters, So really that's when I actually met my husband, right? As I was finally at that point of like grateful and happy, like, so what? I have lupus, I take medicine, but I'm still pursuing my dreams. I'm living a good life. And, I also come from, my family is Holocaust survivors that came here as refugees after the war. So even on chemotherapy, my life was better than Holocaust survivors that brought my family here. You know what I mean? So I still felt pretty darn lucky that, I'm just one generation away from, being chained up or murdered, starved, beaten, right? Like, that's very close. So, my grandparents helped raise me, and they were the ones who raised me with that attitude. Like, if you're free, it's a good day. Like, just, whatever you got, you deal with it. And then you find a way to be happy.
Yeah.
So that's how I met my husband. He didn't even know I was sick, because I was such a positive, upbeat, happy person. And it wasn't me. I really was. It wasn't until he proposed that I had to say, oh, by the way, I know you see me take medicine, but you need to realize what I'm dealing with. Because I didn't talk about it. If I had pain, I didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
Because why pay attention to it? I have pain. I'm going to have it whether I think about it or I don't. So might as well just take my medicine.
So he didn't notice it?
No.
The whole time?
Nobody knew I was sick.
Interesting. Because I've heard someone with lupus recently say that, she's suffering from loneliness right now because of the shutdowns and everything, but she doesn't really feel like she can be out and about because of lupus. Lupus has disfigured her somehow, where she just doesn't feel comfortable even being out. I guess she's afraid of how people would perceive her. And so I was kind of curious, but you kind of touched on that about the rheumatoid arthritis, how it handles that. And you also mentioned something like it causes seizures.
Well, it can for people who have it in their brain. So it depends. Here, this is what I teach people a lot, because I now work with people all over the world who have different autoimmune diseases, and I teach them two parts to it, right? So number one is that while you're sick, you cannot give up on making your life mean something. It can't be that if I'm sick, my life is nothing, and I can only have happiness and be social and enjoy my life if I'm well. Because only when you give up on your dreams and your social life and everything, that's when lupus wins. That's when lupus has killed you, right? Even if you're still alive, because you have nothing. So I had just made a decision early on that I wasn't going to let that happen, that lupus would be something I had, but it wasn't going to be who I was. And so a lot of what I teach people is, yes, we're going to do whatever it takes to reverse your disease. But at the same time, you got to find a way to be happy today. With your disease right now, because you don't want to waste today. What if there is no tomorrow? What if that meteor does hit? You got to find some way through it. And I help a lot of people like this that literally can't get out of their bed. Okay, what can we do in your bed to make it a good day? Can you get on Zoom and talk to a friend? Can can we listen to meditation? Like, can you do an online course that you listen to? Like, something. You've got to do something, because your life cannot be about your pain and your disease, because then there is no life. So, definitely there were times where I had to miss out. Like with lupus, I couldn't go in the sun, or I would get terrible rashes and migraines and arthritis. So I missed out on all the outdoor activities, going to the beach, my friends all going out I couldn't do that stuff. I used to joke those were my twilight years, because My hair is naturally jet black, and I was so pale you could see like the blue veins through my pale skin because I hadn't gone in sunlight for 12 years. So I looked like an extra from the Twilight movies, but like I had to do that. So, okay, I went out after 2 o'clock in the afternoon when the sun wasn't strong anymore, and I hung out with people then. Like I just kept finding a new way to do things. Sometimes I hurt too much to go out. Sometimes, like when I get chemotherapy, I usually, there was at least a week where I wasn't leaving the house because I was just throwing up and felt like crap. So I'm not saying that every day is perfect and you can push through every day, but when I had the symptoms, I did what I had to deal with them. But I always was still focused on what made it a good day. Like I remember sometimes after chemo, when I'd be raw, it was so gross. I hated chemotherapy so much. And I remember like laying in bed one time, it was a really bad day because every time I went in, they would raise the dose because they said if they gave me the highest dose on the first day, it'd kill me. So they had to like raise my tolerance, So every time it was like more. And I was laying there and I was so sick, I couldn't stop throwing up. So they gave me a medicine to help with the nausea, but I had a side effect from the medicine that made it so my eyelids wouldn't close. So now I was like laying like this and I can't sleep because I can't close my eyelids. And like, I'm
What?
It was like, it's called a dystonic reaction.
Oh my goodness.
Up, my eyelids are stuck open. Like, I just feel like it was just a bad day. And I just remember, I was like, all right, well, if I'm going to be awake, I'm just going to think about everything good about my life. I'm just going to just do that. And I just thought about my grandparents, my parents, and my dog, like everything I could think of. The fact that even if I had this disease, I have a lot of good things. I'm free. I get to go to good school. I have a brain that's pretty good. People say I'm funny. Like I have and I just kept going until instead of crying from misery, I started crying because I felt so grateful to be me and that I would never trade my life with someone else's. So sometimes you got to reach and dig deep to find the gratitude. Sometimes you're digging for a while, but I just have always been fervently just addicted to that. I'm addicted to happiness and finding a way to that. Because the opposite, to me, that's worse than having chronic pain. Is feeling like you've lost life. So, I had someone, if anyone's come to my classes, I teach my whole protocol for free because I feel like that should be a human right. Like everyone should have this information. And there's a class that I teach, and I have it on my website for people who want to have lifetime access, but like once every 6 weeks or so, I put it on for free and I do Q&As so that everyone can come and learn and together. And one of the cases I present there is this man called David, who was my first telemedicine client. I mean, we're talking now 10, 12 years ago. And he had lupus and Sjogren's and scleroderma. And he also was very disfigured. And I showed pictures of him in my class. And he had such bad rashes on his face that people couldn't look him in the eye. They just would, try not to look at him. And then the scleroderma made his skin so hard on his hands that all of his knuckles broke open and he had infections in his bones. So he couldn't even close his own shirts. His mom had to close his shirts for him. Mm-hmm. And his doctors told him that the only thing they could do was amputate his fingers. Like there was just nothing they could do. And that's when his mother found me. So David, within a matter of weeks, it was like 2 weeks in, his skin started all healing up again. But I thought of him when you mentioned that woman because he stopped going out, even though his mom, single mom, she helped him like finish school, even though he was sick. And he applied for jobs and nobody would even look at him to give him an interview because he was so disfigured. So his mom would go to work and he would sit home all day by himself, only go into the 7-Eleven for food. And that was it. That was his whole life when I met him. And so I asked him, what do you want for your life? And he said, I want to work. I want to give back. I want to do things. So I always want to know people's goals because I don't feel like my job's about getting rid of symptoms. It's about helping people live the life they were meant to live. Yeah. And within a month of doing my program, he got a job. His symptoms were gone. His skin all healed up. He just last year won an art show in Los Angeles with those same fingers they were going to amputate. He now creates 3-dimensional art. And he works for LA County, helping like youth that are underserved youth, like come out of poverty and find work and, all this stuff. And so he's given back in this big way. And yes, changing his health and his nutrition was the pathway out. But what I loved about him too is that he did still try, like, even though he was disfigured and stuff, he was trying to get out there, but I understand how scary that can be and how you can feel like people are staring. It's a terrible illness, and even with RA, people's fingers get disfigured. These are very difficult illnesses to treat. So I think both things are important. One is to know there is a better way. You can actually eliminate the cause of the disease. You can put out that fire of inflammation by changing your lifestyle. It's not easy to do. It's simple. Eat this, don't eat that. Right. And hey, you don't have to only drink water. I mean, basically people who do well on water fasting, it's like no food is better for you than whatever you're eating. Like, okay. But nourishment's better. Okay. I've seen people do water fast for lupus who will get symptoms get better, but then as soon as they eat anything, they get worse again. So, it's like a pause, but it's still there versus actually reversing the disease and eliminating it. But it's also important emotionally because, I became a trauma specialist and I started seeing when I switched into disease reversal, so many people I saw, they were all trauma survivors. They were people who had childhood trauma or they were traumatized by their illness. They had anxiety and depression. And all of those things are actually inflammatory. Like you can measure inflammation in somebody on a laboratory test from trauma and depression, anxiety. And so I realized I had to put all of my skills into play, not only get them on the best diet, but help them eliminate the anxiety and depression and work through their traumas and find happiness again, find their gratitude again. Because even on the best diet, you're not going to fully reverse the disease if you're creating inflammation every day from your trauma and your low moods. So I work on both. Let's find a way to be grateful for today. Let's find what's good and great about being you. Release that stress and depression, anxiety, and eat the best food on the planet. You're going to have the fastest recovery your body can have. And that's really what my rapid recovery programs are. It's work with me every day for 4 weeks one-on-one or 6 weeks in the group. Every day I'm working on the mindset and on depression, and anxiety and hopefulness, self-sabotage, keeping them away from the cliff when they're ready to jump off the cliff and grab the cookie. It's like step back from the cliff, right? Like whatever it takes to keep them focused and keep them positive and keep them moving forward so that the nutrition has enough time to do its job.
Yeah.
Because no matter how much we tell people how good their raw vegetables are, if they don't eat them, it's not going to work. Right. So it's both. And it breaks my heart when I see people give up and I see people just living lives of not only illness, but depression too. It means a lot to me to help people out of that hole and get back to feeling happy again and not just about dealing with their symptoms of lupus and other autoimmune.
You are so inspirational because you're so positive. I mean, with all the things that you've been through, to have a positive outlook and just still see hope and the light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, that is really inspirational. I love what you're doing. I love that you're making this available for folks because it does sound really scary. What should people expect doing the program though? Because you're like, you help people come back from the cliff, no cookies, right? So we understand raw vegetables as part of the program. Are they allowed to eat fruits? Like what exactly does it look like in terms of the diet? What do they have to give up?
So really, this depends on how aggressively you want to go and how rapidly you want to reverse your disease, right? So what I teach people is a concept that my husband and I coined called hypernourishment. So hypernourishment is an intentional overdose in the nutrition your body uses for cellular repair and optimal immune function, right? So we're looking only at those ingredients. That's why my program is different from just kind of plant-based programs out there, or even raw programs out there, because it is designed specifically for nutrients that accelerate cellular repair and optimal immune function, right? Bringing down inflammation, bringing the anti-inflammatory immune system up. So there's certain nutrients that are necessary for that to happen. If you don't consume them, you're not going to get repair. It just won't work, right? I always tell people, it's kind of like having IKEA furniture. Like IKEA furniture was my main furniture like for most of my adult life. Right? So you get like the supplies, they got the wood, like you put in the bookshelf, you got the wood, you got the different shelves, right? The back part of it. And then they give you the screws and they give you that Allen wrench, right? Mm-hmm. You want to put the shelf together, you need the Allen wrench, right? You need the shelves, right? Otherwise, it's still going to be a mess. Your books have nowhere to go. You've still got books all over the place, right? But it's not because you don't have the instructions. The instructions are right there. It's a picture, right? There it is. Just put this together, right? So your cells in your DNA are the instructions for cellular repair. Your body doesn't want to be sick. It's very important. I just saw a doctor today who she has lupus, and we were talking about this because she's just graduating her residency, and I'm like, I'm going to teach you what you were missing from your education now. Okay. So one of the things I was teaching her is that chronic disease is man-made. All right. This is not something they teach in medical school. They teach you like, oh, you have genes and then you have disease and then you take medicine. That's how it works. No. All right. Your cells have information in the DNA that tells them how to repair themselves from damage. Right. So you're not supposed to have chronic illness. You get sick, you fix the damage and you move on. Right. It's kind of like, if you got the flu, you wouldn't expect to have the flu forever. Right. You get it. Your immune system finds a way out. It's the way it's supposed to work with your immune system is you get something bad that happens, like you get an infection and either the infection wins and you die or you get better. Right. But not this weird thing that we've created where we get sick, we have medicines that keep us from dying, but we just stay sick forever. This is not natural for our bodies. So the reason that we have chronic illness is because we get sick and our cells are like, great, I know what to do to get better. I need vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, omega-3s, and water. Go get it. Oh, we don't have that. Oh, all right. Well, it's going to stay damaged, right? Then another cell injury happens. Okay, great. Vitamins, minerals, antioxidants. I need some omega-3s, I need water. We don't have that. All right, you're going to stay sick too. And eventually we have enough sick cells accumulated that we now create symptoms because we can carry a lot of sick cells and not even notice it. We have 100 trillion cells or so. So we can carry a pretty good amount of damaged cells before we even notice it. Mm-hmm. But once we have enough sick cells to create symptoms, now you can get diagnosed with a disease. But if you hypernourish yourself and provide all of those vitamins and minerals and antioxidants and omega-3s and water intake that your body needs, it can actually repair those cells even after decades. Right? I have a lady I'm working with in her 40s. She has been sick with lupus in her lungs since she was 9 and Sjogren's too. And now for the first time in 30 years, she's off steroids after working with me for my 4-week rapid recovery. For the first time in 30 years, and her lung function got better. How did her lungs get better after 30 years, all of a sudden when they've only ever gotten worse? She finally got the Allen wrench. It's like, oh, bookshelves. We can put the books away now, right? She also had like, anytime she got any kind of cut at all, even a minor one, it wouldn't close. If they put stitches in, it would rip through the stitches. Her skin wouldn't close. And she got scratched by her cat. And her husband's like, great, the whole summer's ruined now. You got scratched by a cat. It's going to take you like 6 months to heal. It healed immediately. It healed. And she's like, oh my God, my skin healed. I said, yeah, now your body can actually repair damage. It had no ability to do it before. So with hypernourishment, you can add that to any diet. And so I actually usually start by not telling people what to quit because that's what scares them away. Like, stop eating meat and dairy and processed foods. They're like, that's my whole diet. Burger and fries and chips. And, like, that's my whole diet. Cereal, it's all processed and animal products. So instead of that, I say, let's deal with what's happening with what you're missing. So the cruciferous vegetables, the raw cruciferous vegetables and the dark leafy greens like spinach, they have the highest dose of the vitamins and minerals and antioxidants and all the phytonutrients your cells need for the screws and the Allen wrench, right? They need that. Most people eat none of it, right? I just got off the line with someone who I just went through her whole diet and there was not one raw thing in it at all. And she was getting like, she just signed up for some vegan home food delivery. And I'm like, this is just oil and crap. It's like, there's nothing. She's like, there was like a eggplant parmesan with noodles. And I'm like, okay, what was the parmesan made out of? She's like, I don't know. I'm like, all right, no, right? So the nutrients are missing in most people, right? So the raw cruciferous vegetables, key. Omega-3 fatty acids, I use flax and chia seeds or cold pressed flax oil. It's the only healthy oil to get the omega-3s up high because the omega-3s are the ingredient that creates your anti-inflammatory immune system. So after you make a mess, who's sweeping it up? Oh, you have no omega-3s? Nobody. Chronic illness, right? You need a way to eliminate the inflammation after it's over. I think right now, the long haul COVID people, those are people who are already developing autoimmune stuff and COVID put them over the edge, where now they didn't have enough healthy cells left to heal from an infection that bad because they were already on their path to getting sick. I had multiple people now with long haul syndrome join my rapid recovery group. All of them by week 3 had no more symptoms. So it just showed me their immune system ran out of tools. It was like, you're not dead, but it's just, there's not enough to heal it. You know what I mean? So that's important. Those omega-3s are essential. And water intake, nobody's talking about water. They're talking about which tea is the most anti-inflammatory. I don't care about tea, all right? You can drink it if you want to. If you don't have water intake, you can't actually have all the chemical reactions take place that are necessary for cellular repair and optimal immunity. You can't. Even the pads in your joints, they're supposed to be inflated with water. If there's no water, they're dry. You got more bone on bone, you have more damage. So it's also dehydration is the number one cause of headaches, the number one cause of constipation. Think about all the money that could be saved to pharmaceuticals if people drank water and didn't have headaches and constipation anymore, right? So, all of those ingredients are necessary. And so what I teach people is that you can literally take those ingredients, water, your flax chia, your dark leafy greens, and you can put them in a blender and blend them up and then drink that, and you can nourish yourself. And I still do that because I do that. That's my insurance policy. And so, a lot of times people drink green smoothies, but it's mostly fruit and they anoint it with some leaves and it's green now. And it's like, these are designed to optimize your ability to get high doses of this nutrition in, but make it taste like fruit so you're willing to have it. You don't have to blend them, you can eat it, but most people who never eat salad, if you can make it taste like mango and pineapple and banana, they're going to eat the leaves. If it tastes, otherwise some of them just look at the salad and they're using their own tears as a dress. Like, come on, just grab a smoothie and go have fun. And that way you're not even thinking about it. You know what I mean? So, so I just found that way that if I can nourish people well, there's two things are going to happen. Is one, if they hyper-nourished and they're eating a crappy diet, they're going to automatically crowd out some of the crap because they're going to be full. Right? This is very filling, all of the omega-3s and all the fiber, and they're bloated, they're gassy, they've never had fiber before, so they're too full to eat as much of the bad stuff. Good. And they finally have some of the antidote where they can do some cellular repair. So I find even people who aren't eating well to begin with, if I tell them add this, they automatically start to eat better because they feel the difference. They have the smoothie and they're like, I had great energy this morning. I didn't even drink my coffee. And then I had my burger and I felt really achy and tired. And so they automatically start craving better. For people who are really sick, I do recommend don't get sicker while you're getting better. Like I call it the Paula Abdul. I know it's highly outdated, but like child of the 80s. All right. Like Paula Abdul, she had that song, 2 steps forward, I take 2 steps back. Yeah. So I always say, don't Paula Abdul it when you're trying to heal, right? That like, that why heal with your smoothie and then cause damage, right? It's like one person's putting together the bookshelf and the other person is kicking down the shelves, right? It's like, it's like, so people who are sick, really sick, and people come to me, I'm often their last choice. Like nobody wants to start eating vegetables. Anything else, I'll drink water and no food. Just don't make me eat broccoli. I was like, okay. Right. So I'm a lot of people's last hope. But I'm okay with that. I'm all full of hope for you. I can hold it for you till you need it. But even when they're super, super sick like that, I'm like, you can't afford it. You can't, like, I just met with a guy yesterday who's got such bad Crohn's disease that they want to remove his entire colon. And they said there's 50-50 chance they might be able to reattach something. And he's 21. And he's like, well, I still want to eat my burgers though. And I'm like, yeah, you're going to have to choose between burgers and your colon. Because I've reversed Crohn's disease with people, gotten them so they didn't need to take the biologics, but you got to eat the right food. The only thing that's in contact with your colon is what you ate.
Yeah.
Right. It's literally just slithering its way through there. If you don't change that, you're going to lose the colon. So for people who are really sick, like I've published reversing end-stage kidney failure, getting someone off the transplant list using only nutrition, right? I can do that, but then we're talking strict. Like for people that are that sick, pure hypernourishment.
Wait, so I just want to pause right there. You just said you can help people at end stage kidney failure reverse that.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. That part I needed to highlight because I'm like, wait, did I just hear that?
Yeah. I published that. Yeah. Because, this lady, she had kidney function down to 14%. She's had kidney failure for 9 years. And her nephrologist, she was on the transplant list from Lupus. And her nephrologist said, it's stupid for you to even do this program. She was in my first rapid recovery group. And he said, nutrition has nothing to do with your kidneys. And he said, nothing's going to help you. And she goes, great. Well, then it's not going to hurt because you're already going to take my kidney anyway. So let me try it. Her kidney function went up 2% every week. It doubled at the end of 6 weeks. So it went from 14 to 28, which took her off the transplant list. So someone who's at end stage is probably not going to get to normal function because there's scar tissue. If you've had 9 years of your kidneys being destroyed by your autoimmune disease, eventually you're going to get scar tissue. And if you have any scar tissue, most of us have scar tissue, it doesn't work like regular tissue. But anything that's inflamed can heal and kidneys can heal. And so, I mean, I helped one person where she was down to 20 something and she went up to 60. 60 is considered normal, 60 or higher, you know? So you have to be very aggressive. Of all the organs, the kidneys are the most sensitive. I had a guy who had 12% of his kidney function. And he started out, well, he was at 6. In 2 weeks, we got it up to 12. And then he ate 1 mini Snickers and went back to 8. Just one little bite. So kidneys are extremely sensitive. So I can help people reverse kidney failure. If there's any inflamed tissue left, we can do it, but you have to be really strict. I always tell them, I'm laid back. It's the kidneys that are, you know, I just listen to them and I know what they like, but like, I'm chill. They're just like, no chocolate, no, you know, but it is possible. And that's what's extraordinary, is that our bodies have more ability to heal than anyone ever thought possible. Yeah. And it's all in the DNA. That's what I'm saying. It's already there. You got the instruction manual, but the sicker you are, the more restricted your diet's going to have to be, because, you know, every bite now is a choice between, you know, once you've got enough sickness in your body that your organs are failing, every bite now is another step towards losing that organ and losing your life, versus someone who's like, oh, I'm a little achy. Cool. You know, eat plant-based foods, start hyper-nourishing, right? You'll start feeling better. You don't even have to eat all raw. You probably just, you know, get enough of these good foods in, eat other plant, you'll be fine, right? But people who are really sick, I get very strict, because I'm like, now food is medicine only until you're well enough to even think about playing with something that could cause harm, you know? So yeah, how strict I am really depends on the illness and the person's motivation. I always say, listen, it's up to you. You know, I lived 12 years with lupus and it was horrible. I still had a good life because I chose it, but I wouldn't choose lupus, you know. But now this October will be 16 years that I have had 0 symptoms of disease, normal laboratory tests. I've had 2 healthy children that I was told was impossible to have. And, you know, I'm in my 40s now. I have no health problems. Right? All my friends who were healthy when I was 16 and I was the sick kid on chemo and they were all fine. Now they're obese, diabetes, high blood pressure, cancer, heart disease. And I'm the one that's fine. Like, you know, it's bizarro world, but we all have that ability. And while we don't know what kind of damage you've got, you have the ability to optimize your health right now. And most people are shocked by what can get better. Most people are completely shocked, things that they thought were gone forever. Like, in my last rapid recovery group, we had a 77-year-old guy with glaucoma. By week 5, normal eye pressure. No glaucoma, right? He's the second person with glaucoma to do my group and have that result. One person was blind in one eye. She was starting to be able to see again, right? These are things that I get goosebumps, because these are things I learned in medical school were irreversible, and yet I'm watching it every day. I'm watching people come back from the brink from things that I didn't know was even possible. But it's because I'm so specific to cellular repair. It's just amazing. All throughout the body, your cells are just waiting for you to take care of them. And you're the only one who could choose to do it.
Yeah. And you're so much fun. Like, having you as a leader through this, you've been through the valley and you live to tell the story, and you have such a positive attitude and you make it fun for folks. And the whole crowding out thing, I mean, for something this severe, I like the way you broke it down. Like, if you're really serious, you have to, like, it has to be a change, but otherwise you crowd out. Because I feel like with folks, they want to know, okay, well, how long do I have to do this for? At least with medicine, you know, it's like you're on it for a specific time, as opposed to broccoli. It's like, do I have to be on broccoli for forever? You know, so that's where they're starting with that limiting belief in that.
Yeah. And it's so silly to me. I always, you know, I'll have someone tell me like, okay, you're coming to me because you know that I can help you with something that's otherwise impossible. We're going to get rid of autoimmune disease. We're going to get rid of lupus. We're going to get your kidneys back. Right. And they go, but when can I actually go back to eating chicken again?
Yeah.
Really? So if this is the antidote and the fountain of youth and the cure to all that ails you, you're going to give that up again? Like, why would you do that? Like, I will never give that up. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Food addiction is strong.
It continues to work for you. You know, like my kids have only ever eaten this way. They're not 100% raw. They're high raw vegan. They were raw for the first year of life. And then switched into adding like some cooked plant-based foods, things like that. But my kids have, like my 12-year-old, the last time he had a cold, he was 2 and he went to public school up until COVID. I was like, you're coming home. But you know, to like no colds. When I was in medical school and we were treating kids, they're like, yeah, 2 colds a season is normal. Apparently not. Apparently that's already impairment. By 7 years old, we see blood pressures going up. Thought that was normal. My kids' blood pressures are like 5-year-olds. Why? Because they have no plaques in their arteries. So, and omega-3s optimize IQ. They're both like, braggy mommy, but like 100% on the standardized test for Texas for math. My younger one skipped kindergarten. My older son took a year off instead. But they have optimized in every area. And I say that because I was recently on Fox News thing where they had a keto doctor arguing with me, and he told me I was causing my kids brain damage by giving them vegetables. And I was like, someone's got brain damage, but not my kids. But I didn't say that. I was much friendlier than that. But this is actually really cool.
They love to do this in the media. And I bet, was he even an actual legit doctor though?
Yes, because he went to Harvard. But guess what? Even Harvard doesn't teach nutrition. All right. Yeah. Whereas I am a specialist in this. And this was really cool. I don't know if you saw this, but I feel like this is, people, someone just wrote not true on my Instagram, and I talked about this, but like that doesn't make it not so if you don't want to believe it. But they did this. I don't know. Did you see the study they did on COVID and the doctors and their diet?
Yes.
Right. Super cool. So those of you who haven't heard about this, really, really awesome. I've been saying for a long time, the negative effect that any kind of animal product, including fish, has on the immune system, right? And I know this because I reverse life-threatening autoimmune diseases. Anyway, I did a study looking at 3,000 people, 3,000 doctors and nurses on the front lines treating COVID. And for some reason, this person from Colombia decided to look at how bad they got infected, if they got infected, and what they were eating. Novel, right? Like exciting. And it was published by the British Medical Journal, which is very prestigious. So they were checking their work, right? So anyway, 3,000 people. What they found is the doctors and nurses that identified as plant-based, we don't know if they were vegan, if they were raw vegan, we don't know what they were, right? If they identified themselves as plant-based, that group of people had a 73% lower chance of getting moderate to severe COVID than everybody else. I mean, like 73% lower chance of getting moderate to severe COVID. Then they looked at, what about pescatarians? So they're plants plus fish. That's supposed to be better for you, right? The pescatarians had a 59% lower risk of moderate to severe COVID. So better than the general public, but nowhere near as good as the plant eaters. Adding fish, boom, significantly lowered their immunity, right? Then they looked at the high protein, low carb eaters, which I hate those words because it doesn't talk about what they're eating. They're eating lots of meat and very little vegetables and fruits. Those people had a 49% higher risk of moderate to severe COVID. So that just like from 73% protection to 59% worse, or 49% worse. So they had a 50% worse chance of getting moderate to severe COVID if they ate almost no vegetables and fruits and lots of meat. So it was really, really stunning, and it was well designed. I mean, they were trying to rule out any differences in diseases, PPE, stress, you know what I mean? They were trying to really make it only about the diet, and they were looking at all the different areas. It was very clear that when you were highly nourished, eating mostly fruits and vegetables and things like that, you were protected and your immune system worked better. And people who eat almost no fruits and vegetables and lots of meat, they're dying faster than people on the standard American diet. 49% worse than people who are not on any diet at all. So the guy eating cheeseburgers, whatever, like, and processed foods, because a lot of times people think, oh, keto, I'm eating healthy because I'm ripped. There's lots of ways to, and this is what I told that keto doctor, he was saying it helps people lose weight. And I said, there's lots of ways to lose weight without giving yourself heart disease and cancer. I mean, you can use cigarettes and lose weight and get heart disease and cancer, right? There's lots of ways you can do that, but you can also lose weight by eating well and actually protecting your heart and lowering your risk of cancer and improving your immune system. So who knows if that guy's even still around, because maybe he got COVID. But it was really it was a stunning thing. And, what they said was they think that the difference is nutrients because there's no nutrients in meat. I'm like, yes. And imagine hypernourishment instead of just random nourishment, how much better the immune system works. So if you can get that in your head, especially in these scary times, that the more I have like this stuff, the better chance I have at optimizing my health in every area, my heart, my lungs, and my brains, and my kidneys, and my kids' growth, and my kids' IQs, and my protection against infections. And the more I have of meat, the worse off we're going to be in all those areas, then it starts to make sense. Like just start bringing that stuff in and start weeding that stuff out. So I really loved that study because it was very clear the differences. And it wasn't just that the keto people weren't as good as plant-based, they were worse than the standard diet. I mean, it was terrifying how bad that was. And actually one of my husband's friends died of COVID, and he was a fitness guy and he was on one of those type diets. So, you know, he had no diseases that he was aware of. He thought he was totally healthy, wife and kids, and ripped six-pack, you know, got COVID, and he was on that respirator and dead very quickly. But he was on one of those like high protein, low carb kind of deals. So a lot of times people think they're doing great and they don't even realize, you know.
That's the scary thing, is that this misinformation and confusion that's being created, because I have a lot of family members who are so into keto. And I think it's because they're like, oh, you can still eat meat and get, you know, it's easier because like you don't really have to do a radical change like what you're telling people to do, you know, what I'm asking people to do, just eat more raw fruits and vegetables. I could literally talk to you all day long. I really appreciate you just being you, like just becoming a doctor, telling people about your story, making those lifestyle changes for yourself, and like holding space for people to heal, you know, because it's a really tough journey dealing with lupus, as I'm understanding. And just changing the diet to this, it seems like it should be simple, but it's really not, because food addiction is so strong in our country. So I really appreciate you. And you have such a great energy and attitude. I just love it so much. So I'm following you already, and I plan to follow you more. I'm glad you're on mainstream news and talking about this and letting the masses know, because it really is going to help all of us, not just lupus folks, but I feel like just create a culture of health in this entire country for all of us. To have this message just perpetuated and reinforced. People need to hear it a million times until it.
Well, you just got my heart thumping. I'm like, yes, let's do it.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, you talk about holding space. I mean, my first book, Goodbye Lupus, is just about my journey and what foods make you sick, right? And what foods help you heal. That should have been enough. Here's what you do. You know, I've had people start their own programs and said they discovered the cure and they're just using my protocol, right? Like I put it out there because I knew people were going to do that, but I put it out there because it doesn't matter. I just want people to have the information, right? But if the information's right there and you don't take action on it, why? So my Goodbye Autoimmune Disease, which I published last year, is all not just, there's a bunch of case studies in reversing many diseases like MS and RA and scleroderma and Sjogren's and all the things that people know it's not just lupus. But the majority of the book is the emotional part of changing your diet. Because if you're watching this right now, this is probably not your first interview you've seen about food and health, right? Most people, they're addicted to learning about this stuff. But if you're learning about it and you're not doing it, why? So I really flex my psychiatry muscles in that and help people understand. It's really all the processes I put people through in my rapid recovery programs of like, you know, why do you self-sabotage? Food addiction, 100% real. I always tell people, listen, you're a junkie. So you have to embrace that you are. You're going to have cravings. They're going to be irrational. You're going to be moody. You know, you got to do self-care. You got to get endorphins some other way. Exercise, sex, fun with your friends, all of the above. Get endorphins some other way, because otherwise you're going to just want the food to make you high and you're going to like hold off until you can't take it anymore. And then you're going to go back to it. Right. So there's so many other aspects that I feel like has not been addressed. So that's why I always say it's simple, but it's not easy. It's simple. Eat these foods and you're going to have optimal health. Go do it. Why not? You know, and it's like, why do people fail after 2 weeks? Because that's when motivation usually wears off. You did it for 2 weeks. You're like, not healed yet? Give me a burger, right? you gotta keep going. You gotta keep allowing it. So, you know, I really try hard to help people through that part of it. And a lot of the videos I post on social media are that part, because my protocol is out there. It's free. It's easy. But how do you make yourself do it? That's the hard part. And I always tell people, listen, if you can do it for a month, you can do it forever. You just have to know that like for the first month, I'm going to be like, oh, I want that. I want, you know, and you just keep going, because what you want most matters more than that momentary satisfaction in your taste buds that's going to continue the disease that you have. So I appreciate you. I appreciate any opportunity I have to get to talk to people and inspire them, that you can take action and you can make your life better, but you're the one that's going to have to let yourself have this. You're the one that has to do it.
Yeah. And how should folks reach out to you? Where would you like them to start first to connect with you?
To connect with me, well, I'm always posting stuff on social media because I feel like that's just the best way to get information out there. So if you look at Facebook, and depends on your age group, right? People my age and older are on Facebook, Instagram, that's at Goodbye Lupus. You can find me in both spots like that. And for people who are looking to work with me, goodbyelupus.com. It's called that again because that was my first bestseller. People know me, but I help people with everything from long haul COVID to diabetes and high blood pressure, of course, autoimmune diseases, with all the different aspects of it, whether it's getting over your trauma and your depression, anxiety, and your health problem. It depends. What I can do depends on where you live. So I'm licensed to practice medicine in Texas, Hawaii, and California. So for those people, I can do more medical stuff. I can order labs. I can, do more medication. I can do psychotherapy, things like that. But for people who are, and people out of the country, I work with people in Canada and India and Arab Emirates and Australia and New Zealand. I'm working with people all over the place. There's no restriction over that. People out in the US, but outside of those areas, I will handle your whole lifestyle. So I can't order your labs. You can have your doctor do that. You have to do doctor manage your medicines, but I can still work with you on optimizing the nutrition and lifestyle to get you where you need to go. So that's all goodbyelupus.com. But if you go to goodbyelupus.com, you can see like there's a free gifts area on the homepage where you can, get started and start making those changes for yourself. But, I get messages from people all over the world who tell me they just went to my classes, read my books, and they're disease free. So that's my goal, is to make people not need me, and then when nobody needs me anymore, I'm just going to lay on a beach for a minute, and then I'll probably get up and start doing something else because I can't stay down for long. But
based off of what's happening right now, I think we're going to need you for at least a few decades. So thank you so much. This has been really an immense pleasure and very enlightening. So thank you. Oh,
it's my absolute pleasure. Thank you.